Welcome to the Gramophone Classical Music Podcast. I'm Hattie Butterworth, and today I'm speaking with the American composer Jake Heggie about the world premiere recording of his opera Intelligence, which is out now on the LSO Live label. The opera was premiered at Houston Grand Opera and tells the story of two female Civil War spies in America. We also speak about Heggie's opera Dead Man Walking, which is 25 years old this year. Heggie looks back on the last 25 years, and we also discuss his career in operatic writing across that period. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the Gramophone Podcast. How's it all going? It's a busy year, lots of exciting things happening.
Lots of exciting things happening professionally, from new works, symphonic works, operas, songs, as well as joining the faculty of the San Francisco Conservatory, which at this stage in my life is a strange thing, but it's a wonderful way to give back to young artists, and that's something that's very, very important to me. So, yeah, it's a big year on many levels.
And the reason we're talking today is because there's a new recording coming out, which has been made of your opera Intelligence, which premiered back in 2023. Is this recording, tell me about it. Is it a studio recording? Is it a live recording? How did it come about?
It is a live recording that was then edited and spliced a bit, as you do. But overall, everything was done live. There might have been a patch session at the end to cover a few places, glitchy places, but that's what we do in the recordings. But it came about, the whole process of Intelligence is pretty amazing. The idea for the piece emerged in 2015 at an event I was doing with mezzo-soprano Susan Graham. We had written Jean Shearer and I had written some new songs for her. And a docent at the Smithsonian came up to me and said, "I have a great idea for your next opera." And Hattie, I can't tell you how many times I hear that. And it is always with a bit of trepidation that I say, "Okay, please tell me what your idea is." And this man said, "Have you ever heard of Elizabeth Van Lew and Mary Jane Bowser? They were spies for the North, and they infiltrated the Confederate White House during the American Civil War. Their story is amazing, and it should be your next opera." And I thought, women spies, Civil War, race relations, I thought it all sounds very current as well as historic. And he walked away. Still don't know who he is, but that was the beginning of the journey. I started looking up information about these women, and though it took 8 years because of delays with the pandemic, the piece finally came to life on the stage in the fall of 2023 at the Houston Grand Opera. And I think it was my fourth full-length opera with the Houston Grand Opera, and they've just been a great company for me to explore. They encourage adventure and community and connection and taking risks. And those are all things that I'm interested in as well. And the piece surpassed anything I could have imagined. I really think it's probably my best opera.
Wow. I feel like people quite often shy away from saying things like that. But to hear you say that, I can understand why this must feel like a real kind of coming together of so many different elements. Because I know also with having these strong female leads, you're someone who, you've written a beast of a mezzo part for Sister Helen in Dead Man. You get to do kind of that again. You have Jamie Barton, who premiered the role, mezzo role of, remind me the name of the Elizabeth, yeah.
So I had Janai Brugger as Mary Jane and Janae as the magical character who we find out is actually Janai's mother, the spirit of her mother. It's a character named Lucinda. So those are the three women, and so one soprano and two mezzos. So I got to really explore a lot of vocal color and interweaving. It was great fun to write. Challenging, deeply challenging. I wouldn't take it on if it weren't challenging, but also a lot of fun.
And the process of seeing an opera be developed and then watching it on stage, how was that with Intelligence? I know you say now you kind of look back on it and you say it's your favorite, maybe your favorite opera. But during that process of watching it, did it become your favorite incrementally, do you think? Or as soon as you put your pen down and finished the score, were you like, yes? Or was it a kind of gradual thing?
No, I knew I was growing. The thing is, any project I take on, Hattie, I always take on something that sort of terrifies me, where I think to myself, I think I can do that, but I have no idea how I'm going to do that. And the excitement with this project was not only the fact that it's 7 singers, no chorus, and yet when they sing together, because of the size of the roles and the voices and the emotional scale of the piece, it feels like there's a big chorus on stage. But also the fact that dance was a big element of the piece, dance and movement. And so it was collaborating with the dance company as well as the singers. And also tracing a story that is deeply embedded in the troubled race relations and the history of this country. And so it was a lot to take on, but I feel like it pushed me in new directions, allowed me to explore the lyricism that I love, but also a different sort of language and rhythmic language because of the dance and movement part of it. And so all of that, I knew something special was happening, and it kept getting delayed and delayed. And the enemy of creativity is interruption. So it kept getting interrupted and delayed, and I had to pick up and start fresh. And so it challenged me enormously along the way. But it was during rehearsals and hearing it with the orchestra and with these great singers, it blossomed into something bigger than I could have imagined. And I just felt in that moment, this is my strongest work to date. I think it's probably, I don't know if it's the favorite thing I've ever done, because I love all the different pieces that I've done, but it's definitely one of the strongest pieces. And, that's what you want as a creative artist, for your work to gain strength as you get older. So it feels very, very special. Oh, we figured that out, yes, very early on. I have to know who I'm writing for. That's part of me being a theater composer. I'm not just writing a role for mezzo, I'm writing a role for Jamie Barton, or I'm writing a role for Janai Brugger, I really have to have it very clear in my head who I'm writing for. And then I can write it very specifically with their vocal color and traits and the way they are on stage in mind. And if I write it very specific and clearly for them, somehow it opens up to be available to many, many different singers. But clarity is key in composition. Your intention, the architecture you have in mind, the breath, the line, and the clarity of who you're writing for.
And I'm really interested in this relationship you have with Jean Shear. Tell me, how did that begin? What was the first libretto you worked on together? And then how was that process for this opera?
Well, we were put together, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Chris Jepson, a wonderful mezzo-soprano who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, because she thought we would be a good team. I was struggling with a project, and I thought maybe Jean would come in and help it. And it didn't work out for him to do that project, but we liked each other enormously. And so the next time I had an opportunity to work with him would be a song cycle called Statuesque, which we wrote for the mezzo-soprano Joyce Castle in 2005. And that was the beginning. And then we started writing operas and song cycles, and it just keeps blossoming. And we have a wonderful collaboration and vocabulary together. I think he knows the language that's going to inspire me and what's going to push me, and I'm also able to push him, and we make each other's work better. And there's no formality of like, now I know that you're very wed to this particular language. You don't have to do any of that. You just say, you know what, I don't like it, or it doesn't work for me, or I think we could do better, or what if we went in this direction? Because I need a collaborator who understands that the job of the libretto, one of the many jobs of the libretto, is to inspire music. And until it inspires music, it is not ready. And so Jean understands that to his core, because he is an artist, he's a musician, he's a performer, he's a songwriter, and a true collaborator. And so when he sends something to me and I respond, and there's a sort of circle that starts to build, and I tell him, I like this doesn't work for me, or what if it was something more like this? And finally it gets to a place where I'm really feeling the music, and I start to write, and even then the libretto is going to change, because music changes everything. And if the music doesn't lead in a big piece like this, what's the point? The whole point is for the music and the emotion to lead the way. If you get too caught up in too many words or too much description, it takes you out of the emotional arc of the piece. And that is our goal. Not only the story, but the emotional story and the arc of that journey. And so that kind of collaboration is very rare. It's not something that you just pick up immediately. It's developed over time. And we've worked together now for 20 years.
And I'm really interested about this being obviously based and set during the American Civil War. Was it tempting to go down the route of feeling influenced by music of that time? Did you feel influenced by music of that time? How did the music and the history kind of interweave, or didn't it?
No, I told everyone I'm not writing a period piece. Needs to feel like a very contemporary piece, with influences for sure, because I am the sum total of all the influences of the music that I've listened to through my life. But it's, I did not want to try to make it sound like it belonged in the 1800s. It's very much a piece of today. I think you can hear influences of maybe some gospel and blues and jazz, but you hear that in all my music. That's just honestly who I am as a composer. But it was interesting. It's always the most challenging part of any big project is what is the sound of the musical world in which these events unfold, in which these characters live. And so once I found it, and usually it's the names of the characters and some detail about them that gives me rhythmic and melodic information that then starts to blossom. And I don't want to anticipate it too much by jumping ahead in the piece. I like to be surprised by the characters and the emotion just as they are in the moment. So my job really is, once the libretto is in good shape and I'm starting to write music, is just to really listen to them and respond and let them tell me how it sounds and feels in that moment. And out of that process, I get motifs, themes, different kinds of colors of music. But it was definitely not an effort to sound like the 19th century.
And when you write an opera, I'm quite interested in the technicality of it. Obviously you're someone that has a lot of work going on and a lot of premieres here, there and everywhere. Do you find you're able to jump between projects, or are you someone that wants to have like this amount of time on an opera?
I have to be able to develop several projects at once, because I need to line them up. I can't just like stop everything and this is the only thing I'm thinking about. So to be able to develop, projects so that they're lined up in the future, but I can only really write one at a time. I can't jump between them because each of them, it requires all of me. And so the development and creation time for an opera usually is 3 to 4 years, from the idea emerging to figuring out who the characters are, what the journey is, what the libretto is going to be, and then writing a piano vocal score, doing a workshop, revising the piano vocal score, and then orchestrating. And it's a long, long process. But during that 3-4 year period, I have to also be developing other things. And also, when I finish the piano score, before I start to orchestrate, maybe that's when I can do a song cycle. But, so I have to be able to move back and forth, but I really can only focus and write one thing at a time.
Got something you want to tell me? Got something you want to say? All right then, keep on digging. I ain't in a hurry anyway. What's gonna happen now? The real story ever be told, or will it be buried here forever?
And when you're physically writing, say, these arias, are you sitting at the piano, feeling around and singing on top? Or how are you, like, literally writing?
I wish it were that easy to say there's just one way. It's I need to move when I'm, thinking of ideas. So I go for long walks and I have my phone with me and I make voice memos. So I sing into my phone based on what I'm feeling and hearing and based on the movement and the momentum that's building. And then I'm in my studio a lot also, just showing up and figuring out, doodling and scratching. I still write everything by hand because part of it all is making a mess, and out of the mess can come something that's meaningful. But I really feel that part of the creative process is giving yourself permission to make a total mess. And so, then I'll fiddle around at the keyboard, then I'll leave and I'll, sing into my phone or sing in my head, and then sort of work it out a little bit at a time. And then sometimes a bunch of it just comes at me all at once, and I can't tell you why. I just know that I have to show up for the work, and part of that means going to the studio and showing up in front of, a blank page or at the keyboard, and sometimes it means walking and being very much in my head and just letting my body move physically while my brain can do this other thing. But there's no one way that it happens. I'd say it's many different things. And then as one particular character or voice emerges when I'm writing, other things start to emerge as well. But the whole landscape of the piece is very important too. Where are they? Why are they singing? Why are they on the stage? Why is there more than one person? Why doesn't one of them leave? All of those theatrical questions about why a character is involved in a story. What do they want? What is in their way? And all of that translates to emotional information and musical and rhythmic information.
And is an opera something that you tend to work on as much as you can chronologically?
I try to because I think, as I indicated, that I like to be surprised in the moment the same way the character is. That the character doesn't know where the story is going to go, and I have to be that character, not knowing what's going to happen next, needing to be surprised in the moment. And how does that sound musically? How does that feel rhythmically? How would they articulate that vocally? It's not. I'm not asking all those questions. I'm just listening to the story and the character. But I don't want to dictate to the character how this is going to go. I need it to emerge organically. And that means giving it time and space. And yes, I, as the composer, I know because of the libretto we've been writing, what the architecture is, where this whole thing is going. I have to have that information. And yet then I need to set that aside as the characters and be surprised in the moment. You can see it's a very involved process, and that's why it takes so much time.
I can almost imagine you, like, completely living in that character as they as they learn what they're singing and why. It does feel like you're incredibly present in that experience, which must be a lot.
It is a lot, and it can be a very emotional journey too, because obviously it's opera. It's filled with big emotions and big decisions and transformations. And so to live with those characters, I remember very well my first opera, Dead Man Walking. When I was writing that, I was in tears a lot of the time because these characters are going through a lot, and I have to live with them and walk with them. In fact, I tell students I have to know these characters so well that I could go for a walk with them outside the context of the opera and still hold a musical and personal conversation.
Do this thing, I'll be chained to you forever, chained to you forever, to you.
And you mentioned Dead Man. This is a big year for Dead Man Walking. It's 25 years since. And I mean, also another line that goes along with Dead Man Walking is that it's the most widely performed opera of the 21st century. When you hear those words, what do you feel?
Well, first of all, I'd say it's widely performed recent work, like it was composed in the 21st century. So bohem and flute still get more performances, trust me.
I don't doubt that they're doing fine.
It gets done a lot. I mean, it was a total surprise. It was my first opera. It was my first big opportunity. It was a first-time collaboration with the amazing Terrence McNally. But it was for my home company, the San Francisco Opera. It was for singers that I know and love. A conductor, Patrick Summers, who is like an artistic soul brother to me. It just was the right project at the right time in my life. And I just remember, I had never written a big opera like this. I'd written a lot of vocal music, but I remember getting into it and thinking, this is where I belong. It just felt so natural. And I have to credit the late general director of the San Francisco Opera, Lotfi Mansouri, for that, because he had the vision to give me that opportunity when I had, again, not written anything of that scope or scale. But he believed in me, and he saw the potential for a big work, a big statement, and he was right. But it was a magical time, I have to say, and everyone knew something special was happening. I had no idea it would take off the way it did. No one could have. I mean, it has the word "dead" in the title. It was a controversial story. I was controversial as the pick to be the composer because I was a complete unknown. Terrence McNally had never written an opera libretto. It was just the odds were definitely not stacked particularly in its favor. And it had a bumpy opening in terms of critical reception. The audience immediately loved it. Audiences absolutely loved it. They even had to add a performance. It was so popular at the opening. But I'd say 80 to 85% of the notices were very, very positive. But the ones that were very negative were from some of the very big publications. And so that was hard. It's when I stopped reading reviews because I knew they weren't for me. But you know what? It was interesting. General directors were taken with the piece and the audience response more than they were concerned about whether the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal particularly loved it or not. And that was a huge statement. And what that did was it gave me permission to really pursue my own voice, not worry about how it was going to be received by the critical press. And that was actually very freeing, and it allowed me to pursue many, many different kinds of work in the future. So it was a big event, and I could never have imagined, though, that it would take off the way it did.
And I realised that I just assume everybody knows it and the story incredibly well, but people might not entirely know that this story is one that's based on a memoir by a nun, Sister Helen, who sort of became very close to someone on death row and follows his story. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say up until his death.
He's a convicted murderer on death row in Angola, and Sister Helen becomes his pen pal. And she works with children in a very poor area of outside of New Orleans. And he asks if she would come visit him. And so she starts to visit him and doesn't know where this is going to lead. And on this journey, she gets to know the parents of the murder victims. She gets to know his mother. She gets to know him. She gets to see how this event affects everyone in the prison, from the warden to the guards to the prison chaplain. And she doesn't realize when she's going that she's going to wind up being his spiritual advisor and accompanying him to his execution. But it's a massive journey that she goes on. And what Terrence really wanted to do was take the whole idea out of the death penalty, out of the abstract, and put a human face on it. Because a lot of people can think of it in the abstract and say, no, that's bad. No, that's good. Yeah, if someone did that to my loved one, I'd want them, killed. All of that in the abstract, and put a real human face and emotion onto it through music and staging. And it takes people on quite a journey. And I think most people feel changed by the time after they see that piece and experience it. It's quite huge. I felt like a different person after I wrote it too.
I can so imagine that. I mean, I first saw it in 2023 actually when it opened the Met season. And Ivo Van Hove's kind of creepy way of the projection and the really stark ending of the execution, which made me feel physically sick. But it did, as you say, like you'll never kind of forget it.
This guy who starts out in your head as kind of a monster, that he could do such a terrible thing, murder this girl by stabbing her as he's raping her, and leave her for dead, and then deny it and try to put it all on someone else, and then eventually admit to it. And then, but does he deserve then to be executed? It's like some people say, yeah, he deserves to die. Yeah, but do we deserve to kill him? This is the big question that hovers. And it also brings in, one of the things that Sister Helen appreciates about that opera is that, for example, at the Met, almost 4,000 people witness an execution, something that you would never be included in, normally. And so, yeah, it can make you physically sick. It can open up our perspectives like, what are we doing? Is this what we are as a society? And in, my country right now, yes, that's who we are. We still do this. I remember talking to a bunch of young students in Vienna when it was being done at the Theater an der Wien. And one of the questions was, so this is something that happened like decades and decades ago. It's not like this anymore in the United States, is it? And I'm like, no, this still happens in the United States and around the world.
So it's very,
very important to tell that story and to go on that journey.
And you haven't shied away from stories that are difficult in your operas. Why do you feel an opera, maybe for you, has to say something, if not political, then make people think quite so deeply?
To me, it's all about perspective and emotion and human journeys. These are very human journeys. It's not that, Dead Man Walking is not an opera about the death penalty. The death penalty is the backdrop that raises the stakes to life and death at every turn. It really is about the journey of all these people caught up in that whirlwind, and it's a very human story. Moby Dick, has a huge backdrop of life and death on the sea, and yet it's a very human story where the stakes are very, very high. And I think opera does that very well. And also, those are stories that challenge me personally, emotionally, musically, theatrically. And if I don't feel challenged, how am I going to feel sustained emotionally and creatively for the 3 or 4 years of that project? So it has to be something that has great resonance and big emotion. And I also feel like, why not take on something that offers a surprising new perspective on a very human story? And I like to try to do things that might have some familiarity in the public conscious, so that it's not what is that, but how are they going to do that? And what kind of journey is that going to be, so that it pulls you in right away because of the curiosity and also that it feels somewhat familiar.
And Dead Man Walking is coming to English National Opera in November with a new production. Has it been done at the ENO before?
No, it was done at the Barbican in a concert reading with Joyce DiDonato. What year was that? It must have been 18. I think it was 2018. So it's already been 7 years. That's hard to believe. I think it was 2018 because it was done in Madrid, and then the whole cast came to the Barbican and did it there. And it was extraordinary because it had to be done almost with no staging, just a little bit of movement and a couple of benches. That's all they used. And it was riveting. It was one of my favorite performances ever. So I'm thrilled that ENO is going to do it in its first fully staged production in London. Very, very exciting, wonderful cast, great creative team, and I'm going to be there, which is very exciting. did my opera It's a Wonderful Life a couple of years ago, and I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, but this time nothing's going to keep me away.
That's awesome. And I'm just really curious about how you feel your music has changed. Because when you listen to Intelligence and you listen to Dead Man, it's still very, very Jake Heggie. You know it's this. I feel it's the same person, but there are differences. How do you kind of like intellectualize what those differences are, or how it feels to write music now versus back then?
It's not something I particularly dwell on. I leave that to other people. I try not to analyze my own work. I listen and I respond to the moment in a musical way that feels fresh and authentic and honest and essential to the project at hand. Which is again why I try to choose pieces that are so varied, because they're going to challenge me and take me in different directions. Which is why song cycles go from everything to funny songs to very serious songs to embodying the earth to talking about a specific event to love to joy to family to parents to all kinds of things. And operas go from Dead Man Walking to It's a Wonderful Life and Moby Dick and Holocaust stories. And currently I'm working on a one-act opera about